G'day folks, Uncle Knackers here. Now look, most people, especially beginners, are using their Mitre saw completely wrong. And it's costing you time, accuracy and even safety. But not after today, because I have 5 new game-changing tips that'll turn your Mitre saw from a clunky benchtop ornament / clothes horse into your workshop's MVP. So whether you're a weekend warrior or a daily DIYer, these next 5 tips will seriously up your game. So let's get straight into it with tip number 1 that could literally save your fingers from looking like this to looking like that. Let's do it. Without doubt, one of the best investments you can ever make for your Mitre saw is to make yourself a zero clearance plate. Not only will you finish up with cleaner cuts, but it helps immensely when it comes to cutting smaller pieces of timber. Now in my other 2 Mitre saw tips and tricks videos, which you can see here in my playlist that I highly recommend that you watch, I talk about the benefits of the zero clearance plate and also demonstrate various ways to cut small pieces of timber, including dowel, without it flying back and hitting you in the face, or even worse, cutting off one of your fingers. Which leads me on to today's tip number 1, which is my new and improved small piece holder. Made to fit my hand and with some sandpaper glued to the tip for extra grip, not only is my hand a long way from the blade, but I am now able to exert greater force onto the small piece of wood that I'm holding, making it even safer to cut. Now tip number 2 is more of a technique to achieve a cleaner finish on a cut-off blunt piece of wood than a Mitre saw hack per se, but you still need to use your Mitre saw to do it. Check this out on my recently made table saw, Mitre saw flip top workbench. Cheeky little plug, link to the plans down below if you're interested. The trim that goes around the outside of the bench top has been finished off with a returned 45-degree angle instead of a blunt square cut that leaves exposed end grain, which in my opinion looks a little crude and unfinished. The trick is to have the grain match on both pieces as close as possible as it bends around the corner, which looks really cool. Now just a quick disclaimer before I get in trouble, this technique, it works pretty good. It's not exact, but it's close. And the reason is that the grain on timber doesn't run in perfectly straight lines. So when you use this technique, make sure you select a piece of timber that doesn't have these big slopey grain lines, because if you do, the profiles won't match. To achieve this, first of all cut a 45-degree angle on the end that you want to finish with, and then very carefully cut that 45-degree angle off and keep that piece. Then on that same end, cut another 45-degree angle, but in the opposite direction. Now when the 2 meet up, the grain should match and you'll end up with a much neater and professional looking finish. How's this? I just went inside, true story, to make myself a cuppa and I saw some breaking news on the telly. Sadly, the inventor of Tupperware passed away a couple of days ago and unfortunately they've had to delay the funeral. Apparently they can't find the right lid for the coffin. Bit dark for this channel? Funeral jokes? Now tip number 3 relates to the dreaded and very common issue of tear out when using your Mitre saw. Peter Piper pickled peppers. When using your Mitre saw as it comes from the shop, the width of the throat of the saw, which is this section here, isn't very helpful in regard to preventing tear out due to the width of that opening. And as you can see, this is a prime example of how many of your cuts will finish up looking like using the stock throat on your Mitre saw. Now to rectify that, I think you know what I'm going to recommend. You guessed it, trusty old zero clearance plate. Because we have eliminated that wide opening on the stock throat using our zero clearance plate, the board is now 100% supported underneath and behind, meaning that you will finish up with a cut with minimal or even zero tear out. Now check that out, zero tear out after using the zero clearance plate. Beautiful. Just make one. It's a no-brainer. Now tip number 4, I kind of went over in a previous mitre saw tips video where I showed you how to do a mitre on 2 pieces of wood of different widths and then finish up with a mitre that matched. Now in the same vein, I'm going to do something similar but with boards of a different thickness. Let's go. So as you can see here, I have 2 boards of different thicknesses. Now the issue with that when trying to do a mitre that matches using a standard 45-degree cut is that it's impossible for those 2 edges to match up. So to rectify that, try this sneaky little trick. Lay one of the boards down on its side and then with the other one, stand it up next to it, hold it nice and tight and then mark it. And then do the same procedure but in reverse, laying this one down on its side. So lay him down and then bring the other piece across, stand him up and then hold it tight and mark with your pencil. So now we should have 2 pieces with marks. Now the next thing to do is to scribe a line from that point to that corner and from this point to that corner. Let's take this over to the mitre saw and cut off those 2 pieces. Placing a scrap piece of wood there just adds a bit of extra support. Now check that out. Those 2 corners now magically match up. Very, very tricky, but cool. Tip number 5. Did you know that you can make a bowl and cut a circle using a mitre saw? Well, check this out. The first thing you need to do is drill a hole set back from the edge no closer than 150 millimeters into a sacrificial board that will take a piece of dowel. Then with your block of wood, mine was 200 by 200 by 30 millimeters thick, don't go any shallower than that, drill a hole in the underside to accommodate the stick of dowel. Now my recommendation is to not drill any deeper than 10 millimeters, otherwise that hole will show through when making the bowl. Next, line the blade up to the centre of the dowel and then clamp the board down so that it doesn't move, which is very important from a safety perspective as well as an accuracy perspective. Okay, time for the fun stuff. Place your board over the dowel and start cutting. Just remember, you don't get a trophy for finishing first, so hold the board down securely and take your time. This will take a few passes, making small increments at a time, so don't try and speed up the process and remove all the material in one hit. Now as you can see, I could have dropped the saw down a little further to totally smooth out the bowl, but in my opinion that looks a little boring, so leaving a few faint saw marks just adds a little bit of interest. To finish off the bowl, reposition the sacrificial board so the blade sits 10 millimeters or so just outside the bowl indent, and then start cutting out the circle. Once again in small increments, and in no time at all, you'll end up with a nice little bowl for some loose change, knickknacks, or even your car keys. Love it. Now if you want to see more awesome mitre saw tips like you've seen here today, make sure you check out my mitre saw tips video playlist, which should be popping up over there anytime soon. And look, while you're here, do yourself a favour, hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on any more stuff that's coming up down the track. And you're also doing me a big favour. Alrighty, after all that, I think I need a cup of tea. So till next time, be good, be safe, and I'm out of here. Cheers.